1:47 p.m., Capitol Hill, Seattle. The city's neon veins pulse in the rain, casting fractured reflections across slick pavement. Somewhere above, a siren wails, distant and indifferent. On the corner of East Pine and 12th, a young woman steps out from the warm, golden haze of a crowded bar and into the cold, uncertain night. Her breath fogs in the air, mingling with the drizzle that clings to her hair and jacket. She glances at her phone, one unread message, the screen's blue glow flickering against her anxious face. The street is alive, but no one seems to notice her. Cars hiss by, tires slicing through puddles. A group of friends laughs under a street lamp, their voices echoing off brick and glass. She walks quickly, head down, clutching her bag close. Her footsteps are sharp, deliberate, swallowed by the city's endless hum. A camera above a convenience store captures her silhouette for a fleeting second, shoulders hunched, eyes darting as if she senses something just out of sight. 52 p.m. She pauses at a crosswalk, waiting for the light to change. Her phone buzzes again, vibrating in her palm. She hesitates, thumb hovering over the screen, then pockets it without answering. The rain intensifies, drumming on metal awnings pooling in the gutters. She pulls her hood tighter, glancing over her shoulder. For a moment, she seems to vanish into the blur of headlights and umbrellas, just another shadow among many. A block away, a security camera records her passing beneath a flickering sign. The timestamp blinks, 11:56 p.m. She checks her reflection in a darkened window, eyes wide, lips pressed thin. Behind her, a figure lingers at the edge of the frame, unmoving, face obscured by the brim of a cap. The camera's lens fogs, obscuring the moment she turns the corner. 2:03 a.m. The rain has become a steady sheet, muting the city's edges. She walks faster now, shoes slipping on the wet concrete. Her phone rings once, twice, then falls silent. She doesn't answer. The call goes to voicemail, her name spoken in a worried voice, then cut off by static. Somewhere nearby, a door slams. A dog barks. The city keeps moving, oblivious. 2:11 a.m. Her footprints, faint and dissolving, lead into a narrow alley behind a shuttered cafe. The alley is empty, save for the hum of a broken streetlight and the distant thump of music from a basement club. The camera at the alley's mouth records nothing but rain and darkness. Her phone, still buzzing, lies forgotten in her bag. 2:34 a.m. Her digital trail ends. No more messages sent. No more calls answered. The city's eyes, its cameras, its crowds lose sight of her. In a place where thousands pass each night, she simply ceases to exist, and then she was gone. How does a person vanish in a city that never sleeps? But the story of her disappearance was only beginning. The city would soon awaken to a nightmare that would haunt it for years to come. Before the headlines, before the search parties and the whispered fears, there was just a young woman living her life in a city that promised possibility. Her name was Emily Tran, 24 years old, a recent graduate, a daughter, a friend. She moved through Seattle with a quiet determination, her laughter echoing in coffee shops, her dreams scribbled in the margins of notebooks. She was the kind of person who remembered birthdays, who sent late-night texts just to say she cared, who believed that the city's rain was a kind of blessing, soft, persistent, alive. Seattle in 2020 was a city on edge. The skyline shimmered with new glass towers, but shadows lingered in the alleys and beneath the viaducts. The world outside was changing, protests, uncertainty, a pandemic that pressed in on every routine. Yet for Emily, the city was still a place of hope. She rented a small apartment above a bakery in Capitol Hill, where the scent of fresh bread drifted through her window each morning. She worked at a non-profit, helping refugees find their footing in unfamiliar streets. Her friends described her as gentle but fiercely loyal. Her mother called her "my light in the storm." Photos from her phone show a life in motion. Emily at a rooftop party, hair tangled by the wind. Emily curled up with a book, sunlight spilling across her face. Emily and her mother, arms wrapped tight, laughing at something only they understood. In her journal, she wrote about wanting to travel, to see the world, to make a difference. "I want to leave a mark," she wrote, "even if it's just a small one." But beneath the city's surface, unease simmered. The pandemic had emptied the streets, leaving them quieter, more uncertain. Businesses shuttered, familiar faces disappeared behind masks. At night, the city felt different, emptier, lonelier, as if something unseen was waiting just out of sight. Friends warned each other to be careful, to walk in groups, to keep their phones charged and their eyes open. Still, Emily believed in the goodness of people. She trusted the city she called home. Her last Instagram post was a photo of the skyline at dusk, captioned simply, "Still beautiful even in the rain." In the days that followed, that image would be shared thousands of times, a digital candle flickering in the darkness. Her mother would replay old voicemails, clinging to the sound of her daughter's voice. Friends would gather in her favorite cafe, speaking her name in hushed, uncertain tones. No one knew how much the city would change after that night. No one imagined that Emily's disappearance would become a wound that refused to heal, a question that echoed through every empty street and rain-soaked alley. The city was still beautiful, but now it was haunted, and as dawn broke over Seattle, the world would soon learn just how fragile safety could be. The clock was ticking, and the search for Emily Tran was about to begin. It began as an ordinary Friday, the kind that slips by unnoticed until it's marked by tragedy. Emily Tran's day unfolded in a series of small familiar rituals: a morning coffee at the corner cafe, a quick call to her mother, a flurry of emails sent from her cluttered desk at the non-profit. By late afternoon, the city's grey sky had deepened, and rain tapped steadily against her window. She texted her friends, "Still on for tonight?" The reply came quickly, "Wouldn't miss it, 7:18 p.m. Emily leaves her apartment, umbrella in hand, her footsteps light on the wet stairs. She wears a navy raincoat, jeans, and her favorite red sneakers. The bakery below is closing, the scent of cinnamon and yeast lingering in the air. She walks briskly, blending into the flow of people, heading toward Capitol Hill's neon-lit heart. 3 p.m. She meets her friends at a bustling bar on East Pine. Laughter, music, the clink of glasses. Emily is animated, her eyes bright, her voice rising above the din as she tells a story about a client at work. A friend snaps a photo, Emily mid-laugh, rain-speckled hair framing her face. It will be the last picture taken of her, 47 p.m. The group moves to another bar, a quieter place with low lights and vinyl booths. Emily orders a ginger ale, checks her phone. A text from her mother, "Be safe, love you." She replies with a heart emoji. Outside, the rain intensifies, streaking the windows with silver. 10:32 p.m. Emily's friends notice she's distracted, glancing at her phone, her smile fading. She steps outside to take a call, voice low, face tense. The call lasts less than 2 minutes. She returns, quieter now, eyes distant. When asked, she shrugs it off. Just work stuff. 12 p.m. The group begins to thin out. Emily hugs her friends goodbye, promising to text when she gets home. She lingers at the bar's entrance, watching the rain, then steps into the night alone. 23 p.m. CCTV captures her walking north, umbrella closed, shoulders hunched. She passes a closed bookstore, pausing briefly to peer inside. Her phone buzzes, an incoming message she doesn't open. 47 p.m. Emily is seen on a security camera outside a convenience store, her pace quickening. She glances over her shoulder, as if sensing someone behind her. The timestamp blinks, 11:47 p.m., 12:03 a.m. Her phone pings a cell tower near a narrow alley behind a shuttered cafe. The last digital trace, no more texts, no more calls. The city's eyes lose her in the rain, 34 m. Emily's phone goes dark. The signal vanishes. In those 47 minutes, something happened that would haunt Seattle for years. The world outside kept moving. Cars, laughter, the endless rain. But for Emily, time stopped. What happened in those missing minutes? What secret did the city's shadows swallow whole? The answers would prove elusive, and the search for truth was only just beginning. The first hours after Emily Tran's disappearance were a blur of confusion and mounting dread. At 7:12 a.m., her mother's call went straight to voicemail. By 8:00 Emily's friends were texting each other, piecing together fragments of the night before. When had anyone last seen her? What time did she leave? Did she mention going anywhere else? The city was waking up, but for those who loved Emily, the day had already soured into fear. By noon, the Seattle Police Department had been notified. Officers arrived at Emily's apartment, the air thick with the scent of stale coffee and rain-soaked clothes. Her bed was neatly made, her laptop open on the desk, a half-written email frozen on the screen. Nothing seemed out of place, but something was wrong. Her red sneakers were missing, her umbrella nowhere to be found. The bakery owner downstairs remembered seeing her leave, smiling, like always, but hadn't noticed her return. Detectives canvassed the neighborhood, knocking on doors, showing Emily's photo to shopkeepers and night workers. Some remembered her, quiet, polite, always tipped well. Others shook their heads, faces closed. The rain had washed away any footprints, and the city's cameras offered only fleeting glimpses. Emily's silhouette under neon lights, her reflection in a darkened window, a blurred figure trailing behind her, just out of focus. By 3 p.m. the case had already drawn media attention. Local news vans clustered outside the apartment, reporters jostling for a statement. "A young woman missing in Capitol Hill," the headlines read, her face suddenly everywhere, on screens, on flyers, in the anxious whispers of neighbors. The pressure mounted. Every minute mattered. Detective Mark Alvarez, a veteran with 20 years on the force, took the lead. He moved through the chaos with practiced calm, but inside, he felt the weight of every unanswered question. He studied the CCTV footage frame by frame, searching for patterns, for faces that didn't belong. He listened to the voicemails, the last calls, the static-laced messages from friends and family. He walked the route Emily had taken, feeling the rain soak through his coat, trying to see what she might have seen. False leads came quickly. A rideshare driver claimed to have picked her up, but the records didn't match. A neighbor reported hearing a scream, but it was traced to a late-night argument 2 blocks away. The city's noise, its endless movement, made everything harder. Every hour, hope slipped further away. As night fell, the search parties gathered, friends, strangers, volunteers with flashlights and printed maps. They called her name into the darkness, their voices swallowed by the rain. Somewhere the truth waited, silent and unseen. Did they miss something right in front of them? The investigation was only beginning, but already the city felt changed. And as the hours ticked by, the sense of urgency deepened. The next day would bring more questions, and even fewer answers. The news of Emily Tran's disappearance spread through Capitol Hill like a chill wind, unsettling the routines of a city already on edge. By the second day, her face was everywhere, taped to lampposts, shared in frantic social media posts, flickering across television screens in living rooms and corner bars. The city's heartbeat seemed to falter, replaced by a low thrum of anxiety and suspicion. Neighbors gathered in small, uneasy clusters, voices hushed as they traded theories and fears. At the local coffee shop, regulars spoke in whispers, glancing over their shoulders as if the walls themselves might be listening. "Did you hear about the girl?" one barista murmured, her hands trembling as she poured coffee. "They say she just vanished." "No trace." The words hung in the air, heavy and unresolved. Rumors multiplied, each more unsettling than the last. Some said Emily had been followed for weeks, that a stranger's car had been seen idling near her building late at night. Others insisted it was someone she knew, a friend, a lover, someone hiding in plain sight. Theories tangled with half-remembered stories of other disappearances, other nights when the city's shadows seemed to swallow someone whole. Social media became a battleground of speculation and fear. Posts warned women not to walk alone, to trust no one, to keep their doors locked tight. Hashtags trended, petitions circulated, and the city's collective grief curdled into paranoia. "No one is safe," read one viral tweet. "Not even here." The sense of community that once defined Capitol Hill began to fracture, replaced by suspicion and dread. At a hastily organized community meeting, residents packed into a church basement, their faces drawn and pale under fluorescent lights. Police officers fielded questions, their answers careful and unsatisfying. "We're doing everything we can," they repeated, but the words rang hollow. A mother clutched her daughter's hand, refusing to let go. A man in the back row demanded to know why the cameras hadn't caught more, why the city's eyes had failed them. Local news anchors spoke of a city in crisis, their voices grave as they recounted the timeline, the unanswered calls, the rain-soaked alley where Emily was last seen. The story became a warning, a ghost story told in real time. No one felt safe. Everyone had a theory, and beneath it all a darker rumor began to take hold, a whisper that the person responsible was still out there, moving among them, unseen. Some said the killer was still among them. The fear was no longer just about Emily. It was about everyone, about the fragile illusion of safety that had been shattered overnight. As the days passed, the city's grief deepened, hardening into something colder. The search for Emily was no longer just a rescue. It was a reckoning. And as the community turned inward, suspicion and fear threatened to consume them all. But the investigation was far from over. In the shadows, a detective was beginning to lose sleep, haunted by the case that refused to let go. Detective Mark Alvarez sat alone in his office, the city's rain tapping a relentless rhythm against the window. The walls around him were papered with faces, maps, timelines, each detail of Emily Tran's disappearance pinned and circled, connected by red string and desperate hope. The hum of the precinct faded into the background, replaced by the echo of Emily's last known steps, replaying in his mind like a broken record. He had seen cases like this before, cases that slipped through the cracks, that left families hollow and detectives haunted. But something about Emily's story burrowed deeper. Maybe it was her mother's voice, trembling with hope and terror, or the way the city itself seemed to mourn her absence. Alvarez found himself returning to the evidence again and again, searching for the thread that would unravel the mystery. Nights blurred into mornings. He skipped meals, ignored calls from home, his own life shrinking to the size of a cluttered desk and a flickering computer screen. He watched the CCTV footage on loop, memorizing every shadow, every passing face. He traced Emily's route through the city, walking the rain-soaked streets long after the search parties had gone home. He listened to her voicemails, her laughter and her worry, trying to hear what others had missed. The case became an obsession. Alvarez's colleagues noticed the change, the way he snapped at questions, the dark circles under his eyes, the stack of takeout containers piling up in his office. He barely spoke to his wife, his children. At home he sat in silence, replaying the night of Emily's disappearance, convinced that the answer was there, hidden in plain sight. He promised Emily's mother he wouldn't stop. He sat with her in the quiet of her living room, surrounded by photos and fading hope, and swore he would bring her daughter home. The promise weighed on him, a silent vow that pressed against his chest with every passing day, but the clues refused to add up. Witnesses contradicted each other, leads fizzled into nothing, and the city's endless noise drowned out the truth. Alvarez pinned new theories to the wall, only to tear them down in frustration. He began to see Emily's face everywhere, in the crowd at the bus stop, in the reflection of a rain-streaked window, in the eyes of every mother searching for her child. The case would take more than he ever imagined. It would demand sleepless nights, strained relationships, and a piece of his soul he would never get back. But still, he pressed on, driven by a need for answers, for justice, for something to fill the silence Emily had left behind. Yet, as the weeks turned to months, the city's memory began to fade. The world moved on, but Alvarez could not. The case that wouldn't let go was about to slip into darkness, and with it, the hope of ever finding the truth. But the coldest cases are never truly forgotten, not by those who can't let go. Time is the enemy of hope. As the weeks bled into months and months into years, the case of Emily Tran's disappearance grew colder, the city's memory of her fading like a photograph left in the sun. Detective Alvarez kept her file on his desk, refusing to let it be buried in the archives. But even his determination could not conjure answers from silence. False leads arrived with cruel regularity, each one a flicker of hope that quickly guttered out. A woman matching Emily's description was spotted at a bus station in Tacoma, only to be identified as a runaway from another state. A tipster claimed to have seen her in a downtown shelter, but the security footage revealed only shadows and strangers. Each call, each sighting, sent Alvarez and his team racing across the city, hearts pounding, only to return empty-handed. The weight of disappointment growing heavier with every dead end. The evidence, once so urgent and alive, began to gather dust. The red sneakers, the raincoat, the phone records, all examined and re-examined until the details blurred together. Forensic tests yielded nothing new. DNA samples were compared, cross-checked, and filed away. The city's cameras, so omnipresent, had failed to capture the crucial moment. The rain had washed away any trace she might have left behind. Emily's friends tried to keep her memory alive, organizing vigils and fundraisers, sharing her story online. But as the years passed, their voices grew quieter, their gatherings smaller. New tragedies took the city's attention. New faces appeared on missing posters. The world moved on, as it always does. Detective Alvarez felt the case slipping through his fingers. He replayed every interview, every statement, searching for the detail he might have missed. He questioned old suspects, re-interviewed witnesses, followed up on rumors that led nowhere. The obsession that once fueled him now became a burden, a constant reminder of his own limitations. He watched as other cases were solved, other families found closure, while Emily's mother waited in limbo, her hope slowly turning to resignation. The city itself seemed to forget. The flyers faded, the news stories stopped. The rain kept falling, indifferent and endless. Emily's apartment was rented to someone new, her belongings boxed up and stored away. The world moved forward, but for those who loved her, time stood still. The city moved on. Her family couldn't. The silence became a second loss, a wound that refused to heal. And in that silence, the question remained, how do you grieve when there are no answers? But even the coldest cases can be stirred by the smallest spark. And somewhere in the darkness, a clue waited to be found. For Emily Tran's family, the passage of time was not a balm, but a blade. Each day without answers deepened the ache, turning hope into something sharp and unyielding. Her mother, Mai, moved through the world as if underwater, her movements slow, her eyes always searching. The apartment that once rang with laughter and music became a shrine to absence. Emily's bedroom remained untouched, the bed neatly made, a favorite sweater draped over the chair, a half-finished book resting on the nightstand. Dust gathered, but nothing was ever moved. To change anything felt like a betrayal. Mai clung to rituals, desperate to keep her daughter's memory alive. Every morning, she brewed 2 cups of tea, setting one at Emily's place at the kitchen table. On birthdays, she baked Emily's favorite cake, lighting candles and whispering wishes into the silence. She wrote letters she would never send, filling pages with apologies, memories, and questions that had no answers. "Where are you?" she wrote. "Are you cold? Are you afraid? Do you know how much you are missed?" The world outside kept spinning, indifferent to her pain. Friends and neighbors offered comfort at first. Meals, prayers, gentle reassurances that Emily would come home. But as the years dragged on, the visits dwindled. Sympathy turned to awkward silence, then to avoidance. People didn't know what to say anymore. Grief made Mai invisible, her sorrow too heavy for others to bear. Emily's father, already distant before the disappearance, retreated further into himself. He spent long hours at work, returning home late, his face drawn and haunted. The two rarely spoke of Emily, their grief a chasm neither could cross. The family, once close-knit, began to unravel, each member lost in their own private torment. Anniversaries became unbearable. Each year, on the date Emily vanished, Mai organized a small vigil in the park near their home. She lit candles, placed photos on the grass, and waited as the sun set and the city's lights flickered on. Sometimes a handful of friends would join her, their faces shadowed by sorrow. Sometimes she stood alone, her hope flickering in the wind. The police checked in less and less. Detective Alvarez called when he could, his voice heavy with regret. "We're still looking," he promised, but Mai heard the exhaustion beneath his words. She learned to read between the lines, to recognize the quiet resignation that had settled over the case. Every birthday, her mother set a place at the table. Every night she left the porch light burning, a beacon for a daughter who might never return. The agony of not knowing became its own kind of torture, a wound that refused to close, a question that echoed through every empty room. What if hope is the cruelest thing of all? For Emily's family, the waiting was endless. But in the darkness, a new possibility was stirring, one that would soon shatter the silence and bring the past roaring back to life. It began quietly, almost as an afterthought, a new detective assigned to the cold case unit, a fresh set of eyes on a file that had gathered too much dust. Detective Lena Morales was younger than most, relentless and unburdened by the years of disappointment that had worn down her predecessors. She read through every page of Emily Tran's case, tracing the timeline, the interviews, the evidence that had led nowhere. She saw not just what was there, but what was missing. Morales brought with her a new era of forensic technology. In 2023, The department had finally acquired advanced DNA analysis tools, machines capable of extracting genetic profiles from the smallest, most degraded samples. She requested a full re-examination of every piece of evidence, from Emily's raincoat to the contents of her bag. The lab technicians worked late into the night, their gloved hands steady, their eyes sharp with the hope of discovery. It was a single hair, found tangled in the lining of Emily's coat, that changed everything. Overlooked in the initial investigation, dismissed as contamination, it had sat in an evidence bag for years. Now, under the scrutiny of new technology, it yielded a partial DNA profile, one that did not match Emily, her friends, or her family. The lab ran the sample through national databases, searching for a match. Meanwhile, Morales re-examined the digital evidence. She traced the pings from Emily's phone, mapping her movements with a precision unavailable in 2020. She noticed a gap, a window of just 7 minutes, unaccounted for between the last sighting on CCTV and the final phone signal. It was a sliver of time, but in a case built on shadows, it was everything. Morales interviewed witnesses again, her questions sharper, her presence unsettling. She spoke to the bakery owner, the bar staff, the night shift security guard who had seen someone waiting near the alley. She listened for inconsistencies, for the nervous tremor in a voice, for the detail that didn't fit. She found it in a forgotten statement, a neighbor who had mentioned a car idling near the alley, its engine running, headlights off. The investigation gathered momentum. The DNA profile returned a hit, a man with a minor criminal record, someone who had never been on the detective's radar. The pieces began to fit together, the picture sharpening with every new detail. Morales felt the old case come alive beneath her hands, the weight of years lifting as hope returned. A single hair, overlooked for years, would change everything. The silence that had smothered Emily's case was breaking. The city, once resigned to never knowing, was about to be confronted with the truth. Could this finally be the answer? The breakthrough was real, and the hunt for Emily's killer was about to begin in earnest. The name that appeared on Detective Morales's screen was both unfamiliar and chilling. The DNA match belonged to a man named Daniel Mercer, a maintenance worker with a minor record, living just 3 blocks from where Emily Tran was last seen. He had never been interviewed, never appeared in any of the original reports. For years he had blended into the background of the city, invisible to those who passed him on the street. Morales dug deeper, her pulse quickening as she pieced together Mercer's life. He worked odd hours, often alone, moving quietly through the city's underbelly. Basements, alleys, the hidden spaces most people never saw. His record was unremarkable, a trespassing charge, a noise complaint, nothing that would have drawn suspicion. But as Morales mapped his movements against the timeline of Emily's disappearance, the coincidences became impossible to ignore. She pulled his employment records, discovering that Mercer had been assigned to a building just steps from the alley where Emily's phone last pinged. Security logs showed he was on duty that night, his keycard used at 12:09 a.m., just minutes before Emily vanished from the city's gaze. Morales's heart pounded as she realized how close he had been, how easily he could have slipped into the shadows unseen. The revelation sent shockwaves through the department. Detective Alvarez, called back into the investigation, stared at Mercer's mugshot in disbelief. "How did we miss him?" he muttered, the question hanging heavy in the air. The answer was as simple as it was devastating. Mercer had never stood out. He was the kind of man no one remembered, the kind who moved through life unnoticed. As word spread, the community reeled. Neighbors who had exchanged polite greetings with Mercer now looked at him with suspicion and fear. The bakery owner recalled seeing him fixing a broken light outside the shop, never imagining he might be connected to Emily's fate. The city's collective memory shifted, old moments recast in a new, sinister light. Morales and Alvarez built their case methodically, gathering evidence, interviewing Mercer's co-workers, tracing his steps on the night Emily disappeared. They found inconsistencies in his alibi, gaps in his story that grew wider with each question. Surveillance footage showed his car parked near the alley, headlights off, engine idling. Just as the neighbor had described, no one saw it coming. The suspect was not a stranger lurking in the dark, nor a figure from Emily's past. He was a man hiding in plain sight, woven into the fabric of the city. The shock of his reveal rippled through Seattle, shattering the fragile sense of safety that had slowly begun to return. How well do we really know those around us? The question lingered, heavy and unanswerable, as the investigation closed in on Daniel Mercer. The truth was finally within reach, but the city would never be the same. The hunt was over. Now it was time for justice. The days that followed the suspect's reveal were a study in tension, each hour wound tight with anticipation, every movement shadowed by the knowledge that the truth was finally within reach. Detective Morales and Detective Alvarez worked in tandem, their focus sharpened by the years of frustration and the sudden electric hope of resolution. The city outside moved on, unaware that justice was gathering, silent and relentless just beneath the surface. Surveillance became their weapon. Unmarked cars lingered at the edges of Daniel Mercer's world, their engines idling in the early morning fog. Detectives watched as he moved through his routines, leaving his apartment before dawn, returning late, always alone. They tracked his steps with quiet precision, noting every stop, every glance over his shoulder. Mercer seemed unchanged, but Morales watched for the smallest slip, the crack in his composure that would betray him. Inside the precinct, the evidence board grew crowded with new connections. Phone records placed Mercer near Emily's last known location, his cell pinging off the same tower, at the same time as hers. Forensic analysts combed through his belongings, searching for traces of Emily. Fibers, skin cells, a forgotten scrap of fabric. Each new detail tightened the net, drawing Mercer closer to the center of the storm. Morales and Alvarez interviewed Mercer's co-workers, their questions careful, their tone deceptively casual. Some described him as quiet, reliable, invisible. Others recalled odd moments, nights when he seemed agitated, times when he disappeared for hours without explanation. One janitor remembered seeing Mercer return to the building after midnight, his clothes damp, his face pale and drawn. The memory, once dismissed, now pulsed with significance. The detectives pressed Mercer himself, inviting him to the station under the pretense of routine questions. He sat across from them, hands folded, eyes steady but wary. Morales watched his every gesture, noting the way his fingers tapped nervously against the table, the way his gaze flickered when Emily's name was mentioned. His answers were measured, but inconsistencies crept in, details that didn't match, times that didn't add up. Meanwhile, the forensic lab delivered its final blow. DNA from the hair found in Emily's coat matched a sample taken from Mercer's apartment. The odds of coincidence were astronomical. The evidence was no longer circumstantial, it was irrefutable. They waited for him to slip up. Each day the pressure mounted, the walls closing in. Mercer's world grew smaller, his options fewer. The detectives watched silent and patient, as the truth pressed down on him like the weight of the city itself. Would he sense the walls closing in? The answer was coming, inevitable as the rain that fell outside the interrogation room window. The moment of reckoning was near, and the city held its breath, waiting for the final piece to fall into place. The city awoke to a grey, unremarkable morning, unaware that justice was about to break its long silence. In the precinct's interview room, the air was thick with anticipation. Daniel Mercer sat across from Detectives Morales and Alvarez, his hands trembling just enough to betray the storm beneath his calm exterior. The evidence was stacked before him. Photos, timelines, DNA reports, the silent accusation of Emily Tran's memory. Morales began quietly, her voice steady, her questions relentless. She laid out the facts one by one, each detail a stone in the growing wall around Mercer. Alvarez watched, silent but unyielding, his eyes never leaving the suspect's face. Mercer's answers grew shorter, his composure fraying with every contradiction. The room seemed to shrink, the walls pressing in, the weight of years of secrets finally becoming unbearable. Then a single question cut through the tension. "Why did you wait in the alley, Daniel?" The silence that followed was suffocating. Mercer's eyes darted to the door, then to the table, searching for escape. His breath quickened. The evidence was irrefutable, the truth inescapable. He broke. His confession came in halting, broken sentences, a story of opportunity, impulse, and regret. He described seeing Emily alone, following her into the rain-soaked alley, the confrontation that spiraled out of control. He spoke of panic, of fear, of choices made in the dark that could never be undone. His words were flat, almost detached, as if he were recounting someone else's nightmare. But the details matched the evidence, the timeline, the wounds that had never healed. Detective Alvarez felt a wave of relief and sorrow crash over him. The case that had haunted him for years was finally over, but the victory was hollow. There was no triumph, only the grim satisfaction of answers at last. Morales recorded every word, her face unreadable, her hands steady. The confession was complete. The truth at last was undeniable. Outside, the news spread quickly. Reporters gathered at the precinct, cameras flashing. Microphones thrust forward as the story broke. Arrest made in Emily Tran cold case. The city, stunned, watched as Mercer was led away in handcuffs, his face pale and expressionless. For Emily's family, the moment was both a release and a new kind of pain. Her mother wept, clutching a photo of her daughter, the years of waiting collapsing into a single shattering moment. Justice, at last. But at what cost? The city exhaled, the tension of years finally breaking. Yet closure for those who loved Emily would prove elusive. The truth had come, but it could never bring her home. Is closure ever truly possible? The question lingered unanswered as the city turned to face the aftermath of a nightmare finally named. In the days that followed Daniel Mercer's arrest, a strange quiet settled over Capitol Hill. The city, so long haunted by uncertainty, now found itself grappling with the reality of what had been lost. News vans packed up and left, their headlines already shifting to the next story. But for those who had lived through the nightmare, the echoes of Emily Tran's disappearance lingered in every shadow, every rain-soaked street. Emily's family moved through the aftermath in a daze. Her mother, Mai, alternated between relief and a grief so raw it seemed to hollow her out. She clung to the small rituals that had sustained her through the years, lighting a candle at Emily's bedside, setting a place for her at the table, whispering goodnight into the silence. The knowledge that her daughter's killer had been found brought a measure of peace, but it could not fill the empty chair, could not erase the ache of birthdays and holidays spent waiting for a voice that would never return. The community, too, struggled to find its footing. For months, neighbors had lived with suspicion and fear, glancing warily at strangers, locking doors a little tighter at night. Now, as the truth settled in, there was a collective exhale, a release of tension, but also a reckoning with the scars left behind. Some gathered at the park for a candlelight vigil, sharing stories of Emily, their voices trembling with sorrow and relief. Others retreated inward, unable to shake the sense of vulnerability that had crept into their lives. Detective Alvarez, who had carried the weight of the case for so long, found himself adrift. The obsession that had driven him was gone, replaced by a quiet emptiness. He visited Emily's mother one last time, offering words of comfort that felt inadequate. "We found the truth," he said, but the words hung between them, heavy with all that could never be restored. The city itself bore the mark of the tragedy. The alley where Emily vanished became a place of remembrance, flowers left on the pavement, notes tucked into cracks in the wall, a mural painted in her honor. For a time, strangers paused there, heads bowed, acknowledging the loss that had touched them all. The city would never be the same. The illusion of safety had been shattered, replaced by a deeper understanding of how quickly life could change, how easily someone could slip through the cracks. Yet in the midst of sorrow there was also resilience, a determination to remember, to heal, to hold each other a little closer. What does justice mean when the wound never fully heals? The question lingered in the air unanswered as the city tried to move forward. The story of Emily Tran became a part of Seattle's memory, a reminder of both the darkness that can hide in plain sight and the light that endures, even in the rain. Some stories never truly end. They echo, long after the headlines fade in the quiet moments and the empty spaces left behind. Emily Tran's disappearance and the years of silence that followed became more than a crime to be solved. It became a wound in the city's collective memory, a lesson written in rain and shadow. For Emily's family, healing was not a destination, but a slow, uncertain journey. Her mother, Mai, learned to live with the ache, to carry her daughter's memory forward in small acts of love and remembrance. She joined support groups, spoke at vigils, and reached out to other families still searching for answers. In her grief, she found a kind of purpose, ensuring that Emily's story would not be forgotten, that her life would be remembered for more than its tragic end. Detective Alvarez, too, was changed. The case had taken a piece of him, left him older, quieter, more aware of the fragility of hope. He kept Emily's photo on his desk, a silent reminder of the promise he had made and the cost of keeping it. He spoke to new recruits about the case, urging them to look closer, to never let a file grow cold without a fight. The city's wounds, he knew, could only heal if its guardians refused to forget. Seattle itself bore the scars. The alley where Emily vanished became a place of pilgrimage, a symbol of both loss and resilience. The mural painted in her honor faded with time, but the memory endured, in the stories told by neighbors, in the caution that lingered in the air, in the way strangers looked out for one another just a little more. Yet, for all the justice that had been served, questions remained. Why had it taken so long? How many other cases waited in the dark, unsolved and unspoken? The city's conscience was pricked by the knowledge that not every family would find answers, that not every missing person would come home. Injustice, like grief, was a shadow that could not be fully banished. Still, there was light. In the aftermath, the community found ways to come together, to support, to remember, to heal. Emily's story became a call to action, a reminder that every life matters, that every disappearance leaves a mark. The city learned to hold its memories close, to honor the lost by refusing to let them fade into silence. Some stories never truly end. They echo in the shadows of the city, in the hearts of those left behind. And as dawn breaks over Seattle, the question remains, how many more secrets lie waiting in the dark? The search for truth goes on, and the memory of Emily Tran endures, haunting, illuminating, unforgotten.